Here's a little spin-off and possible context for the current game of Star Trek Adventures, or perhaps just a chit-chat about a thing. This concerns a TV show, and I guess it is sort of like the two sorts of people in the world thing, in that either you know Blake Seven or you don't. I would perfectly understand if you have never heard of it. I wouldn't really forgive that dismissive tone that phrase usually gets said with among fandom and pop culture, but it's, as a factual statement, it certainly applies to me. I never heard of it. Now, I'm not the world's most attentive fan of visual media. Things blow past me all the time, and particularly with television, I'm almost completely oblivious, and it doesn't surprise me that I, quote, never heard of it. And then I learned more, and it does surprise me. Why am I blithering like this? I'll get to the point. Blake Seven, of which you can see all the DVDs here. I have all 4 seasons. Ran from, 1978? Early 80s. So 4 British seasons, 13 episodes each. We created by and with the showrunner Terry Nation. Doctor Who fans will know who that is. And it is horrendously low budget, but very what's the word I want? It doesn't treat that as a feature. You're expected to step up and fill in with your imagination, and the cast and the writing plays it straight. It's low budget because we had a low budget. There's no sort of fun derived from any awareness about that. And it is very clearly of its era in many ways, but I would like to say specifically in relationship to Star Trek. And I suppose, although I actually haven't seen either of these, the original versions of Space 1999 and Battlestar Galactica. But it is curiously different. And I'll begin with the reason for why I say it's surprising. Anybody can just not know about a show, especially one that doesn't really, get showcased in secondary pop culture. But what's the big deal? The big deal is that the people who made all the shows you do know, they watched it. And it had an enormous impact. If you have a cool ship, it might be very, very high tech, or it might be very, very low tech. But the ship itself, is really, very personal. And the cast are outcasts or rebels or smugglers or malcontents or ne'er-do-wells. Bounty hunter is sort of a semi-legit version of the same thing. And they are itinerant, meaning they sort of run their own business and go their own way and take on the jobs they take on, perhaps, if that's their thing. Or more likely, fight the establishment because they're evil. All of that is Blake Seven, particularly the variously motivated and extremely widely morally varying cast and crew. They don't necessarily get along. They may backstab one another. They have different goals. The moral ambiguity of the leader is a big deal. The leader is capable of many things, and has their own goals, which are often subject to protest and debate by at least one other member, and not in a kind of, well, Captain, maybe we should consider the alternative sort of way, but as in, you're going to, what? Forget it, I'll shoot you first, sort of response. Take all of those and dial them up pretty hard. I could go on. There's lots of things that you would recognize. You would say, wait a minute, V does that. Wait a minute, this does that. Cowboy Bebop does that. Star Hunter to Firefly. Just keep going. And that's just with some of the stuff I've already mentioned. Specific visual cues, characterizations, plot points, even entire plots of episodes. all sorts of things. The phrase "the living ship," all sorts of those things. As I say, the people who made the shows you love watched Blake 7 and are often open. Then you know about it, and then you realize they've been quite open about it. And you say, "Yeah, I based that character on Servalan from Blake 7, or that guy's Villa. This guy's this guy's that, or that event is this, or wow, that ship. Oh yeah, I remember that episode. Stuff like that. It's just scattered throughout all of that sort of, I would say roguish, but that's kind of got a grinning, haha effects. But no, this is more well, let's be blunt. Blake 7 are terrorists, or Blake is, certainly. You could call him a rebel, but he's the kind of rebel, and the things that the protagonists, if you want to call them that, get up to include, blowing up buildings, assassinations, incitements of rebellion, and a wide variety of other things. And the show doesn't stint to show that there are human costs to doing these things. It's a not very clean-handed approach to this stuff. And the opponent, the larger society, which drugs, brainwashes, corrupts, and brutalizes and exploits, everything else, its own population, and anything else it can get its hands on. This massive sort of monolithic, earth-based, militaristic, approach, which you may recognize in a number of other shows that have come after, is called the Federation. And its symbol is the Star Trek Federation symbol turned on its side. It's quite blunt. It's definitely, somewhere else and not in the, quote, same setting. But you really don't have to twist the dial very far. A great deal of the show is clearly inspired by somebody watching the original Star Trek and going, what if we play people who, what about people on those? They talk about prisons and asylums and stuff like that. And then you sort of turn it to, click to the dark, and you've got Blake 7. And the cast varies through the show, in partly logistically, I'm sure, because I think at the end of every season, they were like, oh, okay, we're done. And then all of a sudden it was like, wait, another season? Well, I don't know. So-and-so's doing a movie, so how are we going to do this? Well, so very few of the cast actually run all 4 seasons, and many of them, kind of come in, arc, and finish. Some of them just sort of have to get, bus crashed out of there because the actors didn't come back. And so that occurs. Very few make it all the way through, or are present, I should say, all the way through. But of the ones that really stick, some of them are very compelling. The ruthless logician character in particular has a surprisingly emotional, coherent arc through the series. There's actually more continuity because the show sort of plays fast and loose with a number of bits of continuity because that wasn't really the thing in mind. But there's a lot more than is ordinary for a 70s television show. And the quality of the depiction may vary, but the content can be extremely brutal. I mean, if Blake decides, Blake will go to the wall for anybody if he believes that they have a chance to, consider what's right and wrong, and to, stand on a moral platform of some kind, to have some sort of spine about what they do and who they are. But if they don't, if they throw in their lot with, oppressive power or whatever, you're me. Blake doesn't care. And I love the interrogation scenes. Anytime anybody is foolish enough to, imprison Blake personally and strap him down and give him any access whatsoever. I don't care if it's a robot, a computer, minions, your daughter, whoever. Blake will turn you. And it's particularly, fun. It's like, Blake is easily, I mean, this is a guy who like will, in a fight scene, he'll just like pitch you into the lava pit, or he'll, shoot you in the face or anything like that. But he's at his most dangerous when he's helpless and can only rely on his ideas. The crew, as I say, varies in their priorities. The ruthless logician is a good fair amount of the time about to kill Blake. There's the characters, the few who go along because they sort of admire him. They can't believe in him. They're not idealistic enough, but they, as one of them says, no, I don't believe it, but I kind of wish I could. And that's why she sticks with him. There are, others who are just plain terrified of whatever else may happen to them. I mean, it's definitely they've got nowhere to go. So they'll stick with this, but they wouldn't if they had any choice. And then, there's plain old, homicidal maniac who, they decide, well, we're going to leave in that restraining bolt. Did I tell you that they all start off on a prison ship? Right? They begin as escaping convicts who manage to get their claws onto this awesome alien ship. Special effects are easily forgiven when you get a good look at the Liberator. You're like, holy shit, it's a great ship. And all of these kinds of ships, that come afterward are, they all pay homage, like respectful homage, like the Liberator, and move on. It's got a wonderful, driving charge to it. The villains that emerge over time, the villain of the week or whatever, there's some real kookazoids. They really went for that whole thing of, oh, guess what? Here's an isolated planet. It's a cult. They're crazy. That sort of thing from Star Trek is quite common. You may recognize any number of notable British actors throughout the scenes on the Federation ships, because they spend time with like Federation characters, and they are the most cynical, alienated, vile, corrupt. I mean, the rank and filer brutes, like straight out of Clockwork Orange Police, and the upper ups, are right in there with the British tradition of, Romans trying to backstab each other at the higher echelons of society. They're totally all about that. And then the highest of the higher ups are totally decadent. So they have a lot of, you get to know a lot of those characters because their machinations and their concerns, as Blake is basically causing incredible problems everywhere for them. Their machinations about what to do about it, but also to elevate themselves is, a big part of what's going on. So about this point, you should be saying, wow, either Blake 7 and probably got to it long before I did. I didn't even know about it until the 2000s. When I started to sort of investigate science fiction TV for various reasons, hundreds of shows I never saw, and started to watch some. And it didn't take long. You do this in a slightly dedicated fashion and try to learn a little bit more, and the name will come up. And so you go, oh, I never heard of it. And you watch and go, oh, well, I know a lot of other people who heard of it, right? They made all those shows. So I recommend it, obviously. But on the other hand, is it great? Well, in terms of significance, yeah, it is great. In terms of ideas and visions, yeah, it is great. In terms of, knock your eyes out, presentation, kind of not. I mean, it's carried on the acting mostly. And on the varying, plots, they also got a lot of different science fiction writers to work on the different stories, which means that the content bounces around a lot, and can be quite idiosyncratic. But, generally, well, there's a couple of other things. A lot of great female characters, real butt kickers. Except that there are different people who write different episodes, and particularly Terry Nation will, he's writing this female, she'll kill a guy, right? I mean, hand to hand, right? No big deal. Or have lots of interesting opinions and stuff like that. Then there are at least a couple of the other semi-regular writers who really could not do that. And the same character is just like a ditz wearing chiffon. And you're like, what the hell? I suppose if I had to pick shows that really partake of it, I mean, the sibling shows, the ones that basically say, let's do Blake 7. Definitely Farscape and definitely Lex. for sure. Those are like, we want to do that. And then just one step out, then you're looking at possibly Cowboy Bebop, definitely Star Hunter, which is in this same zone, and Firefly. So, you can kind of see the concentric rings. Then after that, there's all sorts of other influences of 100 kinds. One of the things I like about this idea that you're, a ragtag bunch of misfits, but you have this awesome ship and it feeds you and it's full of rooms and there's always another, weird compartment or room to discover or property that it has. It can go anywhere, right? It's like magnificently mobile and, all sorts of great stuff about this ship. One of the things about Blake 7, and you see it in those other shows I mentioned, a lot of the time, as one of the protagonists, like living on this ship, you're going to be bored. It's not made for humans. It doesn't have libraries, or it doesn't have, a rec center. It doesn't have... You spend a lot of your time getting bored silly. And a certain amount of the plots are based on just what one or another of the crew might get up to just because they don't have anything else to do for a while. And they're not necessarily the most stable of cakes in the first place. So anyway, that's an interesting feature too. It's not all just motivated, driven, circumstantial plot. You also have these dubious characters who get up to dubious stuff, and a certain number of the problems and hassles occur among them or because of one of them doing something. So it is definitely not a predictable show. That I can say for sure. Toward the end, after things spray a lot from season to season for the reasons that I mentioned, one could be forgiven, in the second half of the run for saying this show's kind of lost its way. I mean, it's kind of wandering around and not sure who was that character again. Why are they even sticking with this? I don't get it, and things kind of get a little goofy maybe, but the way it comes together, the way that the cast and the writing kind of gathers itself at that point and says, we're in this to do a great thing here. And they bust out, story at that point, which is well worth the whole ride. So anyways, that's the show that I think of a lot, partly because I don't get to talk about it or listen to people talking about it very much. Some of the episodes really, it's like the old Trek. Some of the episodes just stick with you and get in the skin of your mind, and they're not going to leave. So that's the deal. Blake 7. It's rough and tumble, rather cutthroat, rather, brutal. I mean, it just sets it in front of you and says, is Blake wrong? And Blake doesn't think so. And you're on the ride with him. So this is what it's like when you do that. And it's uncompromising in that sense. You don't get feel-good moments among the crew where we're all friends after all. You don't get, validation of the mission. You don't reach that point where, okay, from now on, everything's good. We're the good guys. It's kind of like, at the end of Firefly, okay, I know, I'm giving it away. Yeah, as if everybody hasn't seen it all. And I'm talking about the movie Serenity, and it's at the end of Serenity when Mal, gets all broody, makes his moral choice after the entire run so far, brief as it is. And finally, at the end, says, referring to the larger society, I aim to misbehave. And this is like, oh my God, that's the big payoff. No, Blake does that I'd say half a second after acquiring the Liberator. That's it. I mean, he's like, this ship can do what? This thing is great. Can you fly this ship? I mean, yeah, I think I can fly. Whoa, okay, we can fly it. Wait, what's this part? What does it do? And, from that point on, forget it. They're on it, or at least he is. They're saying, well, where are we going to go? Earth. Wait, what? We just escaped. We're escaped prisoners. Why would we go to Earth? And Federation headquarters is there. He's like, this has bombs on it. I know it does. We're on our way. So yeah, it's pretty uncompromising in lots of ways. There you go. Go catch an episode sometime. Thanks for listening.